On Monday, May 28, 2017, Governor Cuomo planned a visit to our neighborhood to survey damages and have a press conference. I came home from work to see all the commotion going on. I was asked by a staffer if I would allow Governor to come into my home, view our damages, and I agreed. Governor Cuomo went into my house with my husband's son, along with his staff and some town officials. I came in shortly afterward, and when I walked in, I said to the governor, "Do you think that we have to live like this?" That's when the governor looked at me, approached me, took my hand, and pulled me to him. He leaned down over me and kissed my cheek. I was holding my small dog in my arms, and I thought he was going to pet my dog, but instead he wedged his face between the dog and mine and kissed me on the other cheek in what I felt was highly sexual manner. I wasn't expecting that at all. He said, "That's what Italians do, kiss both cheeks." I felt shocked and didn't understand what had just happened, but I knew I felt embarrassed and weird about his kissing me. I am Italian, and in my family, family members kiss. Strangers do not kiss, especially upon meeting someone for the first time. The governor's staff started to walk out of the house. Governor Cuomo lagged behind them. He stopped, he turned to me and said, "You are beautiful." That made me feel even more uncomfortable. I felt as though he was coming on to me in my own home. The governor and his staff proceeded to view the damages outside of the house. I purposely did not follow because I felt uncomfortable given what had just happened in my living room. After seeing the damages, the governor then circled to the front of the house where I was standing. He then approached me. He took my hand and said, "Is there anything else you want?" I didn't know how to respond. He then leaned down on top of me, and while still holding one of my hands, he forcibly grabbed my face with his other big hand and kissed my cheek. Again, in a very aggressive manner. I felt like I was being manhandled, especially because he was holding my face and he was kissing my cheek again. The way he looked at me and his body language made me very uncomfortable. I felt he was acting in a highly flirtatious and inappropriate manner, especially in front of my family and neighbors. He is almost 6 feet tall. I'm approximately 5 feet tall. He towered over me. There was nothing I could do. When the governor left, I thought the craziness was over. However, to my surprise, within days, I received a call on my voicemail from the governor's staff. The woman on the other end said Governor Cuomo was having an event in town, naming the place and the time, and asked if I'd like to attend. Notably, she did not say my husband and I or my family and I, only specifically me. I purposely did not respond to the invitation. I felt very uneasy about the call. I was the only one that received the call and the personal invite from the governor. Then, to top it off, the governor sent me a letter and pictures. The pictures were featured the governor and me. And the letter was addressed only to me. More alarms going off. The whole thing was so strange and inappropriate and still makes me nervous and afraid because of his power and position.
This is a photograph of Governor Cuomo inside of Sherry's home, holding her hand. So this is the photo of the governor kissing Sherry outside of her house.
All right. Well, that's certainly very entertaining. I don't know why anyone thought that that would in any way be helpful to the case against Cuomo, because that was just really one of the most ridiculous things that I have heard, at least lately. That was, as you may or may not know, that was Cuomo's latest accuser, represented of course, by the not so lovely Gloria Allred. There's this like small, cadre of different Me Too lawyers that just kind of like swoop in. You look at like Bobby Kaplan with Amber Heard. Of course, I know that she dropped her eventually. That your situation, like Amber Heard, your situation is really bad when the Me Too lawyers, the showboaters, are dropping you, right? Maybe Amber should call up Gloria Allred. I don't know. Is there a connection there? So anyway, I wanted to I wanted to basically address some different objections that have come my way. A lot of them through YouTube comments or some Twitter comments about the videos that I've made about Marilyn Manson and about Andrew Cuomo, and also from some critics of the Depp videos. Now, you don't get critics of the Depp videos very often because so many people have come on board with the idea that Amber Heard has run a hoax on Johnny Depp and that she's horrible. But there are still some Amber defenders out there. Anyway, I don't get too many comments defending her, but what I do get are a number of comments of people asking, is it necessary? It's great that you want to defend Johnny Depp. Is it necessary that you defend Marilyn Manson or that you defend Andrew Cuomo? Can't you just stick to the guy that everybody, really, really likes? I agree that for like a general like swath of the population, Johnny Depp is certainly and has made himself certainly a more attractive figure in a lot of ways. And so I don't deny that Marilyn Manson has cultivated a certain image that maybe now when there's false charges against him is not working for him as well as it once did. But I know that, the idea of tying Johnny Depp to Marilyn Manson or to a politician, that's not, some of you don't like that. But my point really, what I'm really ultimately interested in, just getting to the truth of things. And it's just amazing when you do look into, I think, carefully and skeptically. And when you do look at the Cuomo accusations and you do look at the Manson accusations, that they are just utterly baseless. We just, this idea that we have that where there is smoke, there's got to be some fire. I think that traditionally that idea served us well. But I think that in this new media age that I've talked about elsewhere in my videos, I don't think that holds true anymore. There is just too much of an incentive, especially in these modern Me Too cases, for not only for people to come out with false stories or exaggerated stories or whatever, but also there's these Me Too sort of media machines here of like, lawyers and publicists and all of this. Not to bring Woody Allen into it, because that brings in a whole other bag of controversy. And anyway, that's a whole other thing to tackle. And there's lots of people doing that online. I don't know if I'll ever get to it. But one of the things that Woody Allen said was that, there was a whole industry, he said, that seemed to have developed around churning out bad press and around him and churning out bad stories and marketing this idea that he was a child molester and molested his daughter and all of that. And, we can talk about the merits of the case against him or lack thereof and the problem with the pharaohs and all of that. But the point is, I do think that when you look at these cases, and you can look at it in Amber Heard, the case with Johnny Depp, and you can look at it certainly with the Marilyn Manson situation and the Andrew Cuomo situation, and you see that there really does that these Me Too hit jobs, as I view them, they really are very like systematic, and they really are a kind of an industry where you have these lawyers like Deborah Katz, the lawyer for one of the Cuomo accusers for Charlotte Bennett. Like a Bobby Kaplan, who used to represent Amber Heard and still inexplicably is attacking Johnny Depp supporters online. You have people like that. You have people like Gloria Allred, right? I mean, these are the usual suspects. And it seems like what happens is you'll have these lawyers and these publicists and all of these different people and these activists, and it's just this like ungodly soup of stuff that when it gets trained, when it gets someone in their sights, when they get someone in their sights and they train their sights on that person, then they're gonna take them down, right? I mean, metaphorically speaking, and financially, and everything else, and reputationally. And so, yeah, it's interesting, and it's worrisome. I mean, Gloria Allred, she's not doing this out of altruism, right? We all get that. She's doing this because she's getting something out of it. And so, I think it's good to be skeptical. Now, one of the objections that I said earlier that I get is that, in the Manson and Cuomo cases, you have a number of these different accusers. And I really hate this idea now that quantity equals quality, because it really seems like what is happening and what we saw and heard with that ridiculous Gloria Allred press conference with with the latest Cuomo accuser, is that there seems to be, in these modern Me Too cases, especially lately, there seems to be this effort to sort of cloud the far-fetched nature at times, or the problematic nature of these stories, to sort of cloud over that, and to cloud over at times the fact that a number of these allegations are not even a big deal in the Cuomo case. But to cloud over these problems and the stories and the accuser's history and all of these inconsistencies in the accuser's backgrounds that I've talked about in other videos, to cloud over that with just the number. Just get as many out there as you can and keep them coming. And it's interesting that with the Manson and the Cuomo cases, they seem to follow just basically the same sort of playbook, where you have one, maybe two marquee accusers. You know what I mean by marquee? Okay, if you think about like movies and whose name was on the marquee, these sort of, you'll have like in the, one or two marquee accusers. So in the Marilyn Manson case, it was Evan Rachel Wood and then Esme Bianco. Evan Rachel Wood, really famous, and Esme Bianco, well, sort of, but anyway. And so you'll have these two big accusers, and then they will be followed by a rollout of lesser-known accusers and or accusations that aren't as big of a deal. So, you saw in the Manson case that you had Esme Bianco and Evan Rachel Wood testifying months ago at the California State Assembly. And then but they didn't say who the guy was, right? Because Evan said she was never going to name her accuser. I guess the right time ended up coming months later. But anyway, and so, but just a couple of months ago, then Evan Rachel Wood came out and she named her accusers Marilyn Manson, Brian Warner. And then what was it, like a week later, Esme did the same. And then you had throughout that, starting with Evan Rachel Wood, and then throughout that into when Esme came forward, where these all of these different lesser figures posting about their stories, and some of them with more serious than others with Manson. But the thing is, and I did this in my videos, okay, go and look at those. I'm not going to retread it here, but when you look at the individual stories, when you look at the testimony of Evan Rachel Wood, some of the things that she asserts in her testimony, when you look at the interviews that Esme Bianco did when she came forward, a couple months ago, when you look at the Instagram statements of these various other women, they just all fall apart in significant ways. They've just got big problems. And so, these rollouts now, I'm very, very skeptical of these it seems highly strategized and choreographed Me Too rollouts that we see, where you're just supposed to sort of be like dazzled by the number of accusations and like, well, it must be true. Or maybe it's just a lot of bullshit. No? Have you thought of that? Does it have to be true because there's a lot of it, or maybe it's just a lot of bullshit that's being shoveled at you? And then if we look at the Cuomo cases, as I've talked about in my other video, I mean, most of these accusations are just ridiculous, and quite on the level of what we just heard in the Gloria Allred client testimony. I mean, it's just ridiculous. He kissed her, basically what happened, and we have pictures of this. That's the audacity of these people too, is to show us these dumb, ridiculous pictures where it's so obvious to us that nothing is happening. I'm talking about in the Cuomo case and this latest testimony. It was a flood victim. He was touring the flooded areas. He was trying to show warmth and compassion, and so, in full view of cameras, taking a picture of it, he leans over and he gives her a kiss on the cheek. And then, and it's all the stuff that she describes. It's so nothing. It's just politeness. And she's just intentionally twisting it. You can tell, to try to just amplify and maximize press coverage. It's just deranged. It is like deranged. But we get the release of these stories, like in the Cuomo case, where almost all of them aren't even anything. And then you'll have a couple of marquee, accusers. And so with Cuomo, it was Lindsay Boylan, the New York politician, Lindsay Boylan, and she accused him of kissing her, unwanted kiss. And then you have Charlotte Bennett, who who did these used to work for him and did all these and did an interview with Norah O'Donnell, and I talked about that in a previous video. Now, I had talked about the Charlotte Bennett case already, so go look at my other video where I analyze her interview. But I did get some criticism that in the Cuomo video that I didn't address Lindsay Boylan's accusation, and that was the main accusation. Well, in fact, I did, okay? I talked about it a bit at the end of my video, but okay, yes, fair enough. I did not address it simply because I wanted to address a number of the others that, and I felt like hers was, if you read that Medium post, I think it's pretty obvious there are problems with her story, but let's read it. Okay, so this is entitled, My Story of Working with Governor Cuomo by Lindsay Boylan. I'm going to read through it. All right. My story of working with Governor Cuomo. Quote, let's play strip poker. She's quoting the governor, supposedly. I should have been shocked by the governor's crude comment, but I wasn't. We were flying home from an October 2017 event in Western New York on his taxpayer-funded jet. He was seated. Of course, she has to get that little dig in there, right? His taxpayer-funded jet. Okay, well, if you have an issue with that, I'm sure that you can take it up with, with someone other than us in this MeToo article. All right? We can debate whether or not governors should have, I guess, the level of travel that they have, or be able to go around in taxpayer-funded jets. But that is not the point of this. So let's not get that snide little remark in there, making it sound like Cuomo is just out there on his own, sucking up taxpayer money with these extravagant government-funded trips. Come on. He was seated facing me, so close our knees almost touched. His press aide was to my right and a state trooper behind us. Now notice how the fact that their knees almost touching, that's given some kind of significance here, okay? Doesn't mean anything. She puts it here to make it sound very, very concerning or ominous or sleazy. Oh my God. Well, they're in a jet. She's working with him. It's cramped, and their knees aren't even touching. They almost touched. So all that she's basically saying here, this is her big opening salvo. Are you kidding me? Is that, oh my God, I had to sit in this cramped taxpayer-funded jet, and his knees almost touched my knees. I mean, this is the kind of puritanical, seriously, puritanical, yes? Ringing any bells? Bullshit. Okay. So he said, let's play strip poker, according to her. People make harmless jokes, even jokes with somewhat of a sexual overtone. It's not a big deal if that's what he says. And I don't trust anything that she says in here because they're preposterous things, too. So how do we know what's real, what's not? If some of it's preposterous, I would say the whole thing might not be reliable. That's exactly what I was thinking. I responded sarcastically and awkwardly. I tried to play it cool. But in that moment, I realized just how acquiescent I had become. She'd become acquiescent. Governor Andrew Cuomo has created a culture within his administration where sexual harassment and bullying is so pervasive that it is not only condoned but expected. His inappropriate behavior toward women was an affirmation that he liked you, that you must be doing something right. He used intimidation to silence his critics, and if you dared to speak up, you would face consequences. Now, she said all of these things, but she's not given us any specific examples. And this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about with these Me Too hit jobs, is that you tend to get one of two things. Either you will get obvious distortions, or even lies, such as when Evan Rachel Wood testified that she had no idea that Marilyn Manson had a drug problem. Everybody knew that. Everybody knew that. Such as when she tries to present herself as being this really naive girl who was just very inexperienced and everything, when she was doing at the time, when she started dating him, she was doing all these interviews and talking about, how much she loved rolling around in the blood with him and whatever in music video. I mean, come on. But anyway. All right, let's keep going. Oh, and so I know what I was going to say. So I was going to say, you either get those kinds of distortions, right? Or you get a situation where, as in this case, the person is using all of these broad general terms describing, he created a culture within his administration with bullying, harassment, inappropriate. But when we actually get to the details, what are the details? Well, he made a quip about strip poker, and my knees almost touched his on the taxpayer-funded jet. Come on. That's why I panicked on the morning of December 13th. While enjoying a weekend with my husband and 6-year-old daughter, I spontaneously decided to share a small part of the truth I'd hidden for so long in shame and never planned to disclose. The night before, a former Cuomo staffer confided to me that she too had been the subject of the governor's workplace harassment. I'm trying to imagine like Lindsay Boylan and Charlotte Bennett, conferring about their non-harassment. Her story mirrored my own. Okay, so she continues on, and then she says that she decides to tweet because his name has been floated. Cuomo's name had been floated as a potential candidate for U.S. Attorney General. She was hearing about this, the highest law enforcement official in the land, and that set her off. So that's what she's saying. Okay. And she says, in a few tweets, I told the world what a few close friends, family members, and my therapist had known for years. Andrew Cuomo abused his power as governor to sexually harass me, just as he had done with so many other women. All right, now I'm going to skip down to a bit here to the actual allegation. And I just want to take her strongest allegation here, okay? Because I don't want to read the whole thing. She complains, for instance, that he compared her to his girlfriend, said that she could be sisters or whatever. But this is hearsay. This is other people saying he said stuff, right? So he actually never said this to her. But anyway. All right. She's saying, I complained to friends that the governor would go out of his way to touch me on my lower back, arms, and legs. Again, I don't know, it's hard for me to trust everything I'm being told here. All right, so here we go. Here's her big accusation. She says, the governor's behavior made me nervous, but I didn't truly fear him until December 2016. Senior state employees gathered at the Empire State Plaza Convention Center in Albany to celebrate the holidays and our year's work. After his remarks, the governor spotted me in a room filled with hundreds of people waiting to shake my hand. As he began to approach me, I excused myself from the coworkers and moved upstairs to a more distant area of the party. So basically, she sees him. He's coming toward her as if to greet her. She excuses herself. Minutes later, I received a call from an unlisted number. It was the governor's body person, his assistant. He told me to come to the Capitol because the governor wanted to see me. I made my way through the underground connection that linked the plaza to the Capitol. As the black wrought iron elevator took me to the second floor, I called my husband. I told him I was afraid of what might happen. That was unlike me. I was never afraid. Sorry, there's a bug in here. I was never afraid. So basically what's going on is that she has never had an experience so far with the governor that should in any way make her afraid. It's just not established. It's just not established in this. But she claims that she's afraid. And she's called to a meeting with him at the Capitol. And she's so upset and worried that she calls her husband, even though there's no history of her having anything to worry about with the governor. and no one else having accused the governor of anything. She says, I exited the elevator to see the assistant, the body person, waiting for me. He walked me down the hall of governors. I asked, are there cameras here? I remembered my mother's text warning the month before. I worried that I would be left alone with the governor. I didn't know why I was there or how it would end. I was escorted into the governor's office, past the desks of administrative assistants, and into a room with a large table and historical artifacts. The door closed behind me. It was my first time in his Albany office. The governor entered the room from another door. We were alone. And she says that we were alone with emphasis, as you know, it's a separate sentence. Oh my God. But you know, the way that this is described, it's described as being so ominous, but all that's happened is that she's come into the building. His assistant has escorted her to his office. She's asked him, you know, this bizarre question about cameras. The assistant's probably like, what? But anyway, and so they go into the governor's office, and then the governor comes in, and they're alone. As he showed me around, I tried to maintain my distance. He paused at one point and smirked as he showed off a cigar box. He told me that President Clinton had given it to him while he served as the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. The 2-decade-old reference to President Clinton's affair with Monica Lewinsky was not lost on me. Now, understand, all he's doing here is he's taking out a cigar box, okay, that Clinton has given him. You know, Clinton is a big important figure in the Democratic Party, like him or not like him or whatever. I'm not going to get into that. But he's like making small talk, and he's showing her the cigar box. And yes, I understand there's the whole thing with like the Monica Lewinsky and the cigar and all that. And I don't know, who knows? Maybe it was some kind of like really sort of like oblique sexual reference or whatever. But like, if you can't take that, you're this like hardened politician lady. You want to be in politics, and you cannot take a man making references to cigars and Bill Clinton. Like that just, you know, that is a polite reference to Bill Clinton giving him these cigars, and that just sends you over a wall. Like, you are not competent then for whatever office you're trying to seek. That's insane. All right, then she says this. I mean, she's just paralyzed with fear because of an oblique, you know, Monica Lewinsky reference. Come on. That I don't even think he really made. Says the governor must have sensed my fear because he finally let me out of the office. I tried to rationalize this incident and wait, what? That's it? That is it? Come on. All right, let's go to the big one though. Let's go to the unwanted kiss, okay? All right, it says, I tried to excuse his behavior, his pervasive harassment. I told myself it's only words. But that changed after a one-on-one briefing with the governor to update him on economic and infrastructure projects. We were in his New York City office on 3rd Avenue. As I got up to leave and walk toward an open door, he stepped in front of me and kissed me on the lips. I was in shock, but I kept walking. I left past the desk of Stephanie Benton. I was scared, someone who works for him. I was scared she had seen the kiss. The idea that someone might think I held my high-ranking position because of the governor's crush on me was more demeaning than the kiss itself. Now, this is her big allegation. She claims that she's working with the governor, and she gets up to leave and walk toward the door, and he steps in front of her and kisses her on the lips. Now, look, if this occurred exactly as she's presenting, that it's just basically like a random sort of drive-by kiss on the lips, right? Of course it's weird. Of course it's inappropriate. Of course he shouldn't be doing that. You know, if I really thought that the governor was just like randomly like kissing, accosting these women, randomly kissing them, even if it was just a little kiss on the lips, yeah, I would say that that's inappropriate behavior. But the problem is that the rest of this article, and I've only read some of it to you, but the rest of this article is filled with such obvious bullshit in the way of things that don't make sense, inconsistencies, things that she's obviously blowing out of proportion. I mean, just like this scenario, what I've just read for you, you can see that it's suspect. You can see that it is being set up for you in just a certain way to always give you the worst impression. And there's just some things that don't add up for me. And so, yes, we get to this one thing. He kisses her inappropriately, but again, I don't trust this author. This is not a reliable author from what we've seen that came before it in the rest of the article. And, you know, you go ahead, you look at it yourself, you read it, you tell me if it rings true for you. I don't know what the context was with the kissing. I don't know if there was any kind of, if she's being above board with us about the dynamics of their relationship. You know, politicians, there's a lot of like hormones going around. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say that or whatever, that's like somehow sexist of me to suggest that, but there's a lot of, I'm really getting the feeling that have been a lot of women circulating around Andrew Cuomo's office who have had the hots for him. And it's almost to me, it reads like a kind of a Freudian projection. These women like Charlotte Bennett assuming in a number of these, I think, fairly innocent interactions that he's trying to like communicate some deeper attraction that he feels for them. I don't know. It seems pathological to me. And again, I know I'm not supposed to say that, but like with the Crucible, some of us have got to start speaking up, even if we ourselves are imperfect vessels for truth. Still, even so. You know, and the other issue that I have with her, with Lindsay Boylan, is that, you know, there was an article that came out several weeks ago. It was like it was this like kind of fluff piece expose. It made her look really good, and her mother was interviewed in it too. And the mother talks about how Lindsay Boylan's mother said that when the mother was a career woman, and when Lindsay was growing up, when she was raising Lindsay, that the mother, experienced all of this supposed sexual harassment, and that she was constantly, in her words, basically, she more or less saying that she was constantly talking to her daughters about sexual harassment, just constantly talking to Lindsay about sexual harassment and what she would one day face in the workplace. So what you're telling me is that you, from a young age, you indoctrinated your daughter in the belief that she was going to face sexual harassment everywhere and that she needed to look out for it. That is kind of strange to me. And I think that, you know, I'm not sure how much of what Lindsay is saying is politically motivated, because she is trying to get political mileage out of this, and she certainly is, if you haven't looked into it, and how much of it might be a kind of a pathological way of viewing her interactions with the governor. But if you grow up with a mother who is constantly talking to you about sexual harassment and how you're going to have to face this difficult workplace environment, I think that it probably does something questionable to you. All right, now I wanted to explain briefly before I get more into this. This is my temporary background. This is actually from my favorite movie of all time, Apocalypse Now. You can see the helicopters. If you've ever seen this movie, you know that there's this scene where these helicopters come in and like massacre a village. It's really entertaining. So, I'm kidding. No, it is actually entertaining and meant to be entertaining, but it's also, you know, grotesque and horrible. And that's the whole point with war movies and horror movies, is that you're feeling repulsed at the same time as you're feeling like sort of strangely fascinated too. But that's a whole other subject. I'll talk about that one. I'm trying to get something different set up. And thank you, Susan and Susan's husband, for your donation, your support. I hope you're okay with me announcing you like this. No, seriously though, amazing. And I am in the process, it's kind of a slow process, but I am in the process of working on upping my production values. And so part of the reason why I've got this temporary thing here is I'm doing something else, long story. Now, the title of this video is The Anatomy of a Me Too Hit Job. And I think that it's partly misleading in that actually what I want to do in this video is I want to go back and look at a work of literature that some of us have been talking about on Twitter, The Crucible. And don't worry, I'm not going to give you a long, drawn-out, boring tale or anything. I want to actually just talk about some of the points of the play that I think are really interesting and that I think really resonate with what's going on now in some of these Me Too cases, these Me Too hit jobs. And, you know, I guess the reason why I want to talk about this play is because I think it's important to understand that nothing, as the Bible says, nothing is new under the sun. And that, you know, there are these iterations, repeated iterations of things from the past. And so, yeah, it's Me Too, maybe a little bit different form in some ways, but this idea of like these hysterias that get whipped up Well, we'll talk about it. So the basic thing with The Crucible, it's a play that was written mid-20th century by Arthur Miller. He was married to Marilyn Monroe for a while, kind of an interesting odd couple. But it was inspired by the Red Scare, Senator Joe McCarthy's hearings to try to snuff out communists. And I'm not going to get into that whole thing because it's not what we're talking about. But that's sort of that's the context. Now, the play itself is about the Salem witch trials. And so it takes place, hundreds of years ago, colonial America, that's before the United States was even the United States, and still just these early, very primitive Puritan colonies. And what happened is that, according to the historical record, okay, so this is the fact that we're talking about before I get into the play, just what happened in the Salem witch trials. Basically, what happened is there were some teenage girls and some younger girls, but a range of ages, okay, of girls and young women who basically got whipped up into a frenzy and perpetuated this kind of charade that they were possessed by witches, or that there were witches in the town that were trying to possess them. And apparently what happened is that there was one child in particular that basically stopped speaking and kind of went catatonic. And, who knows what was really going on. In the play, The Crucible, she's faking it for attention. But anyway, and then this idea caught on that she was possessed by a witch and that there were demons, witches loose in Salem, in this Puritan village of Salem. And so a number of the townspeople started turning on other townspeople, and you had a kind of a court that was set up and would adjudicate whether or not certain people in the town were witches, and in these kind of ridiculous sham trials. And so a number of people were executed. I can't remember the exact number. I think it was like in the high teens, but you can look it up and see. And everything from like really, really old lady who was just believed to be this very saintly woman until people got really mixed up, to younger people. But anyway, the name of one of those who's executed in the historical record, his name is John Proctor. And so this play, The Crucible, Arthur Miller took this story, this basic story of the Salem witch trials, and this character of John Proctor, and then he constructed this fictionalized narrative around it. And this is the crux of the narrative, okay? John Proctor is in a marriage with a woman who is very good. She is very saint-like. Elizabeth is her name, and she's depicted as being this very sort of proper and saint-like woman, a good wife. He has no reason per se to dislike her necessarily, but his attention is caught by this girl named Abigail, and she's this younger girl who's in the town, and she's like younger is in like late teens, right? But she catches his eye, and her personality, Abigail's personality, she's extremely seductive, and she's extremely, as she's depicted in The Crucible, she's extremely kind of bored with Puritan society. She thinks that she talks about this at one point in the play, and also in the movie that Miller wrote that was based on the play with Daniel Day-Lewis. So some of this I might be grabbing from the movie too. Okay. But she's extremely bored with Puritan society, and she sees John Proctor as one of the few people in this Puritan society that has not just been like sort of brainwashed. He seems to think for himself. He has a kind of an individualistic strength where he doesn't go to church because he doesn't like the pastor, and he doesn't think that he should have to go to a church where he thinks the pastor is a ridiculous man, and so he doesn't go to church and so on. He's a Christian. And so forth, but he's different. He's his own person. He's this sort of, like Nietzschean Ubermensch. All right, and so here's the deal. So she seduces him, and I'm not like placing the blame, all of the blame on her, except that she is depicted in the play and in the film as being like a seductress, and he's depicted as like not wanting to have an affair with her, and she's so like seductive. And at one point, you know, you actually see in the film she's like grabbing him and like trying to like pull him. So it's almost like she's kind of the one who's assaulting him. Anyway, so I don't want to go too far afield with my own interpretation or suppositions, but that's what's going on. So you have this guy who's older, this guy who is, you know, very sort of individualistic and goes his own way and stuff, and she's attracted to that, and she seduces him. And this is all backstory in the play. This is like already happened, okay? But I'm giving you the backstory here. And so they have this affair. And, you know, you have to understand, too, that, like, his wife is depicted as being a very good woman, but kind of a cold woman. And so you do get this sense that, like, he loves his wife, but she's not a very passionate person. And you know, so it's like, you know, it's an age-old story. He's, like, stuck in this marriage that's a good marriage in a lot of ways, but kind of frigid or whatever. And then there's this younger woman who's, like, all hot to, you know, get it on with this slightly older guy, or somewhat older guy. I mean, he is older, yeah, in the play and also in the movie. It's Winona Ryder paired up with Daniel Day-Lewis in the movie. Yeah, so anyway, they have an affair, and then his wife finds out. Elizabeth finds out, and so she makes him, you know, understandably, she's like, you've got to dump your, you know, your mistress or whatever. And so, and here's the thing, is that Abby actually had been working for them for a while. She was working for them in this capacity. I can't remember how, but she was staying with them, and she was working for them. So Abby was kind of like a servant too. And so you had that whole like layer of things. So she is dismissed in terms of like she's fired as a servant, but also she's like Proctor breaks up with her, whatever. This is backstory. All right. Well, so this is what happens. In the play, one of the little girls in the town, and there's a whole backstory to this, but she falls silent, she goes catatonic, and it basically is like playing this game or running this hoax and on her parents or whatever. You know, these games that kids sometimes play. And so she goes silent, and then then she starts getting attention for it. And someone speculates, because, you know, they were really interested back then, and like much more so than today, but like in like the devil and the dark side and all of that, right? Like if you're focused a lot on being a saint, then you're also implicitly focused a lot on like sin and darkness and all of that. So you had this puritanical society, and yet at the same time they were very like sort of obsessed with, you know, the devil and things like that. And like, so they thought that when this girl felt catatonic, that it must be the devil. It must be the devil was loose in Salem. And so what basically gets whipped up is more of these girls kind of join in as they get more attention and things are ramped up. And so what starts off as, you know, one single girl, a little girl who's faking this situation, who's faking being, you know, possessed or whatever by town witches, then it becomes this thing where more and more of the girls are involved, and for attention, for various reasons, okay? And so, because more and more of these girls are falling possessed or whatever, are claiming that these witches are loose in town and that these witches have possessed people in town, and the people in town are witches, these girls start accusing all these different people. And so what happens is Abigail, because Abigail wants to get back with John Proctor because she still has the hots for him, right? So Abigail accuses Proctor's wife, Elizabeth, of being a witch. So Abigail goes to the court and she says, oh, you know, I can't remember what it was, but something like I was sleeping one night, and then, you know, Elizabeth, you know, she came to me in a dream and she hurt me, or she was stabbing her. I can't remember, right? But Elizabeth's a witch. And because there's this idea in this town that you have to believe all the accusers. So if you don't believe the accusers in this story, right, and this is how it is in this story, in this town, it's felt that if you don't believe the accusers, then you must be part of the problem, right? Because only someone who's working with the devil would have a problem with what this court is doing. And so if you have a problem with what this court is doing, then you must be in league with the devil. And so there was this pressure then, because nobody wanted to be seen as being in league with the devil, and there's this crazy like frenzy going on. There was this pressure to just believe every story, because if you didn't believe it, then you were suspicious, okay, and you were standing in the way of the court and all of that, doing the will of God. So Abby accuses Elizabeth of being a witch, and the court and they go and arrest Elizabeth, and they throw her in this like horrible, Puritan jail, which is like almost like a dungeon. Like, it was not a good place to be. I like the way they depict it in the movie too. Like, you stay in there for 6 months or something, you're gonna come out with like, bad teeth and like not looking good. So they throw her in there, and now and Abby, who thought that she and John would get together once she got the wife out of the way, because she's that like crazy and delusional and obsessed with him. Well, guess what? No, he wants to save his wife and the mother of his children and not be with this crazy girl. So John is in a pickle now, because John knows that the only way that he can save his wife is to come clean about Abigail, right? In other words, like, if he goes to the court and if he says, Abigail is lying about my wife, she's trying to destroy my wife, then the court is going to say, well, why would she have reason to do that? And then he's going to have to say, oh yeah, because we had an affair or whatever. And that was like a really big deal in Puritan society, especially back then. And one of the things that's interesting is that in this play is that even before John's wife Elizabeth gets accused and gets arrested, John has been feeling like he needed to go to the court and tell them that these girls were faking it, because he had actually heard word through Abby early on that they were just playing around. And so John actually knows early on, from the beginning, that this is just a hoax. This is just a scam. And he holds off going to the court and telling them because he doesn't want to ruin his own good name, because he knows that if he comes forward and says this, they're going to ask, well, who told you? And he's going to have to say, well, Abby. And they'll say, why are you talking to this girl, or what's going on? And so here's the thing, because John Proctor knows that he himself is a flawed man. In other words, he cheated on his wife, and lied to her and whatever, and committed this sin. Because he knows that, he doesn't feel like he has the authority to stand up and say, well, this is wrong. And he doesn't want to bring attention onto himself and his flaws or his failings. I think that there's another good lesson from the Crucible for us. When we think about the pressures that are applied to people to not speak the truth, or to not stand up against some of these MeToo narratives. One of those pressures is that the person is made to feel like they themselves, have flaws, and therefore, because they themselves have flaws, they wouldn't want the microscope on them, would they? And there's almost this sort of like, I don't know. What I'm saying is, like, think about the Johnny Depp trial, for example, the UK trial in which he sued the Sun for libel, right? And I always get the liable and libel confused, but it was libel, slander, right? Anyway, point is, one of the things that we've talked about before, is how in the UK trial, Johnny Depp just was repeatedly slammed by the opposing attorneys for his drug use and his admitted extensive history of drug use. He said, I've done every drug known to man. I've been addicted to things, whatever. And there seemed to be in the judge's ruling, Justice Nicol, there seemed to be a real, and also the way this was really just promoted so much in the media, is like, every detail of his drug use was just, people fixated on it. And not only that, but on the stand, the attorneys for the Sun, the attorney just basically put Johnny Depp through the ringer in terms of pointing out his past, mistakes that he had made, and digging up text messages where Johnny Depp had been blowing off some steam to a friend and had said something kind of, unkind a bit about his ex-wife, and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm talking about Vanessa. Said something. He called her that French albatross, which is a very sort of very literary insult. I'll give him that. But anyway, my point is that it was like basically in order for him to get his side out there, he had to be willing to put up with this character assassination. And this question of, oh, well, you're a drug user and you have this shady past with drugs, like that should matter as to whether or not he's telling the truth about being abused by Amber Heard and being the victim of this hoax. And so it very much reminds me of what was going on in the Crucible, where you have someone, John Proctor, main character, who knows the truth and who wants to stand up for the truth and who is actually a very strong person in a lot of ways, and yet because he has this skeleton in his closet, because he has this sin that he lusted after this woman and had an affair with her, and she turned out to be crazy. She turned out to be Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction. I love that movie. It's such a great movie. Even now, it still holds up. Go watch it. And Michael Douglas will always be hot. Anyway, where was I going with all that? Distracted. And so the point is like John Proctor does not come forward because he is imperfect. He has this skeleton in his closet. He had this affair. And it reminds me very much of this idea of today where, there's all of this stuff, all of this mud thrown at Johnny Depp, by Amber Heard and by Amber's team. And so much of it is just harping on the drug use, right? And the text that he sent. Right, as opposed to what Amber was doing was like actually, cutting off his finger and stuff. I want to do a video actually, and I will soon, where I analyze that audio, the Australia audio, right after she had cut his finger off, and talking to the security and all of that. I know that we've talked about it a lot before, like online on Twitter and stuff, and videos and things. But I just think there's more to be discussed there. It's very interesting. And it's a very similar situation also when we think about Marilyn Manson and the way that Marilyn Manson's reputation, his artistic personality, the dark stuff that he projects as an artist, the way that has been used against him as ammunition by so many who say, well, of course he must have assaulted these women. He must have done what they're saying he did because look at his persona, look at what he projects. And again, it's just very similar to like in the Crucible, where because John Proctor, the main character, because he doesn't go along with society, because he's not like the other Puritans, he doesn't go to church, he walks to a different beat, then that is now ammunition against him, really, and he feels like he cannot come forward, he can't tell the truth, he can't fight what's happening because of this reputation. And so the story is very much, yes, it's about mass hysteria, and it's about, hoaxes, and it's about the young turning on the olds, right? And the young women turning on, older men or older people. But it's also about the kind of moral courage that it takes to stand up against a kind of mass hysteria. And a lot of people, just like John Proctor, a lot of us feel like hesitant to do it, or feel like we can't do it because then it'll draw unwelcome attention on us, or people will say, well, why are you okay with sexual assault or whatever. I can't tell you, how many times, and it's fine, it's what I signed up for, to doing these YouTube videos, but I can't tell you how many times I've been called a misogynist. What is it? Internalized misogynist. Yes, internalized misogynist, because it couldn't be that I just have different legitimate conclusions, right? And so, So what happens is he finally, John Proctor, he doesn't come forward until his own wife is falsely accused and endangered and thrown in prison and could be killed. He comes forward, and basically what happens is he's not believed. It's a longer scenario than that. It's interesting how it develops in the play, and it's more intricate. But he comes forward and he tells the truth. He's like, basically, he's forced to tell the truth and say, yes, I had an affair with this girl, and I cheated on my wife, and now she's pissed, and she's coming after my wife for vengeance and whatever. He says, she means to dance with me on my wife's grave, which I think is kind of an interesting thing, this thing to say. She means to dance with me on my wife's grave. And so he comes forward, but he's not believed because people in the town, they're just so wedded to the idea of their own propaganda. They're so wedded to this narrative now that they have been supporting for weeks that has taken hold, and no one wants to stop the momentum of that. No one wants to say, oh my God, we believed this lie, and we've already executed a number of people, for this lie. And plus there are a number of people in the play who have gained a great deal of esteem in the town from being a part of this. In fact, there's one of the female accusers, the false accusers in this, another teenage girl, I think late teens or maybe early 20s. But anyway, her name's Mary Warren, and she ends up, she resists for a while, but she ends up turning in with the others and joining these ridiculous accusations. And one of the reasons why she says that she's doing this is because she has newfound respect and esteem in the town. People look at her, and now she's somebody. She's not just some servant girl, but she is one of the accusers. She's one of the troubled or the afflicted who's being abused by these witches in the town. And so, one of the things that the play examines is the different motivations that people have for false accusations in these situations where they get a lot of attention that they wouldn't otherwise have gotten. And we see that, this is one of the things that people ask me is, well, what do you think these Manson accusers are in it for? What do you think these Cuomo accusers are in it for? What do you think Amber Heard is in it for? Well, we know one of the things that they're in it for. We know that it's attention. And look, you can say, well, I just don't believe that somebody would be capable of lying about sexual assault or lying about, domestic violence or whatever for attention. You don't? Really? Because I know a lot of people who would do a lot of things for attention, I feel like. And I think we see that demonstrated in our world all the time. It's interesting how in the Marilyn Manson situation, for example, it's interesting how many of the accusers had careers that were definitely on the wane. That, in the case of people like one of the main accusers, Esme Bianco, and you see the way that she is, her career was basically over. She, as some people on the internet found, she's basically now doing just really kind of lame appearances, very insignificant stuff. She doesn't really have a career in the movies to speak of, or in film, and certainly nothing like when her career was at its apex with Game of Thrones. Someone online even found where she was basically just sort of dancing on tables at a restaurant, so to speak. So anyway, I'm not trying to insult her. I'm just, and I hope you can see that. I'm just saying that her career needs a boost, and a number of these accusers, especially, and also the ones who are very sort of tangential, like Wolf Alice, the Wolf Alice singer, for instance, who claimed that Marilyn Manson filmed up her skirt at a festival. Well, and then internet sleuths have found that she never played or appeared anywhere with Marilyn Manson. That there's really nowhere where their paths would have crossed. And then you have someone like Phoebe Bridgers, who has this really ridiculous story about how ridiculous in that it's so insignificant and such an obvious grab for attention on her part, her attempt to get her name in there with the story and look edgy and down with MeToo and everything. And so anyway, she tells this story or posts on Instagram about how when she was a teenager, she went to Marilyn Manson's house And he made some joke, a quip about a rape room. And anyway, the point, and again, if you look at their careers and the trajectories and stuff, it's really not actually a credible story. This is something else that internet sleuths have found. And again, the point of this video is not to debunk these stories, although that would be an interesting thing to look at, to do. And I've done some of that in other videos. But just to point out that there are a lot of this kind of bandwagon effect that does occur. And we see this, like in the story of the Crucible, where, if people just, more and more people pile on because it's advantageous to them and to their careers in this situation, in this present day situation, it was advantageous to them to do so. And so if you look, for instance, at Esme Bianco's Twitter page, and when you look at her Instagram, after she comes out with this interview in the New York Magazine, and after she does this ABC interview, then she's got posted on her Instagram and her Twitter, she has posted all of these links to her interviews, and she's been posting all of this stuff about domestic violence and sexual assault and all of that, and she's treating it like she's treating this issue of supposed victimization by sexual assault and domestic violence, she's treating it like just, another credit on her IMDb page. I mean, really, her biggest credit, actually, as of late. And that's the thing, all right? Again, I'm not trying to be mean. I know some people will say that I am, but I'm just trying to point out some cold, hard facts here. And I think this is one of those situations where it's like we're expected to forget things that we actually know. I'm quoting this guy, Murray, Douglas Murray, and he's an interesting writer. Check him out. I like him a lot. In some ways, he's actually like an intellectual hero of mine. But Douglas Murray, he says that increasingly in this crazy media age, we are on various issues. We are being asked to it's demanded of us that we forget things that we really know. And we really know when we look at the situation when we look at some of these allegations with Marilyn Manson or Andrew Cuomo, if we look at it with a critical eye, and certainly, very obviously with the Amber Heard Johnny Depp situation, if you look at it, then you see what the truth is. You see what doesn't hold up. You see the holes in the accuser's stories. And yet we're expected not to. And the media is still, see no evil, hear no evil sort of thing. So, and, of course you might say, but, these allegations, they're credible or they're not credible. And so go look at I've done videos on this. And, if I get irritated by anything in the comments, it's really only when I feel like people are being deliberately obtuse and they haven't watched my videos or they haven't seen that, I really am considering a lot of stuff. But, but anyway, my point is that we see in this play and we see in these different examples the forces at work to get people to come forward with false accusations. And there is a sense of purpose and meaning that one gets in activism. And that's another thing that you see in the play is people want to be a part of this spiritual movement. We are cleansing our town of witches and Satanists. We are purifying it. We are purifying the town of these evil influences. And there is this, this emphasis on purifying and cleansing, a kind of a purging. And I feel like there's this attitude now with MeToo that we don't even have to look critically at allegations. We're not supposed to even investigate them or question them. Because if so, we are impeding this movement, and this is a purification movement. We are cleansing our institutions of this kind of thing. And of course, if we're talking about Harvey Weinstein or something, I think it's good to deal with that kind of bullshit. But we're catching a lot of other people in this net, and we've got to slow down. Okay. So what happens in this play? What ends up happening is John Proctor is presented. He stays in prison for a while they're sorting through all this stuff and they're executing different people. And understand that a number of people falsely accuse others just so that they themselves will not be suspected. And so there are a number of people who are pressured to turn on their friends and their neighbors and people in their family so that they themselves will not be hanged as a witch. But not everybody does it. And there are some who don't go along with it and choose to be executed instead of falsely testifying against their friends and neighbors. And anyway, so John Proctor is presented. He's in prison for a while, and then they pull him out. And by this point in the play, the tide has started to turn in terms of the public opinion of the town. People are starting to realize that this has gone too far and that, oh my God, maybe it wasn't even legitimate in the first place. And so what happens is those who are running these trials, like the main judge and his guys, they start to get really, really nervous. And so they feel like to put things to rest and to kind of convince everybody, they need to get one important person to turn. They need to get someone like John Proctor, whom everybody knows is this individualist and this Nietzschean, Übermensch, this man of strength of character who won't, who's not into bullshit or whatever. They need to get him to turn and to say that there are witches in the town, to accuse others. And so they go to him. They go to John Proctor, and he's been like rotting in jail and everything, right? Expecting to be killed. And they go to him and they say, we will give you your freedom today. And you can be back with your family and whatever. We'll give you your freedom. All you have to do is say that you saw some other people with the devil. And that you yourself were with the devil, but now you're not, okay? In other words, they're like, look, just admit that you were a witch and that you've turned from it, and also admit that other people in town are witches and that you know that they are, and then we will let you go. And you just have to sign this document stating that. So he says, no, I'm not going to accuse anybody else. I'm not going to do that. So, he stands up for that. And then they say, okay, fine. You don't have to falsely accuse anyone else, but you have to admit what you did. You have to admit that you were a witch. And they said, if you admit that you're a witch, then we will set you free today, and all this can be over, but you just have to sign this document stating it. And so, they present this document to him, and he goes to sign it because he is, he's so sick of being in jail and of basically he's been, starving in this Puritan prison, and he wants to see his family, and he loves his wife, even though he cheated on her, he loves his wife and his children, and he wants this to be over. And so they put this out in front of him to sign, and he goes to sign it. And he scribbles to sign it, but he just, in the end, he can't. And so he takes it, he rips it up. He rips it up. And so he's hanged for it. And so the story of the Crucible is really about how a man who feels like he is not a good person, a man who feels like he has morally failed in a number of ways in terms of cheating on his wife and stuff, finds this kind of redemption by just refusing to lie, by just being truthful, by standing for the truth. And it's this really simple act of just not admitting to a lie. It is such a radical act, it's who is it that I think is it Jordan Peterson who says that one of the most radical things that you can do is just not say yes to a lie. And so this pressure now that we have with MeToo, especially in cases that are, where the person maybe has a weird image, like Marilyn Manson, or is maybe not the most politically popular, and, at times like with Cuomo, the idea that it is so easy for these people to, it is so easy for us to not say anything, even when we see that something is wrong. All right. And so, I just think that's interesting. I wanted to talk about that play because I keep seeing so many. I feel like people need to go back and read that play to really understand the nature of witch hunts and mass hysteria, and the idea that yes, the young can lie against the old, women can lie against men, about men, and in these, and these things have been written about, and they were being written about in great works of 20th century literature in different contexts. All right. So anyway, I guess that I hope that you've gotten something out of this, and really, I still want to do a follow-up video, a more extensive follow-up video to the Cuomo situation, and actually I'm interviewing some people and stuff that I think will be relevant to that. And then also, I'm going to come out with another Manson video, and I'm going to be working with Greta. We're putting one together on Evan Rachel Wood and so forth. So point is, I've got a lot coming out about these individual cases, and we'll certainly have something out on the Depp Heard situation too soon. But I wanted to get this video out and just kind of touch on some things that have been interesting to me, or have been bothering me, and also discuss the Crucible, because I do think there's like a lot of timeless lessons there for us that a lot of people still need to learn. All right, as always, subscribe, donate if you want to, click like, leave a comment, negative or positive, whatever, and I will see you again soon. Bye bye.